Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another amazing episode of And Rolling. I'm very excited. If you hear some chewing in the background, the dog has the munchies. So, you know.
She's finishing her dinner.
Speaking of munchies, wow, what a movie.
Oh, man. Yeah. And that could be taken so many ways. Let me paint a picture for our listeners. So we have just returned from our viewing of Nosferatu. And we were in the back row, which is our preferred row. We like being in the back and in the middle.
I'm not one of those front row heathens.
Well, and why would you be? We like having our necks on straight. So we're sitting in the back row, and across, there's a little space blocked off.
Oh, that's what you meant. Oh my God, you're right. Yeah, keep going. Yeah.
And across from us, on the other side in the back row, are these three young women, and I swear every 10 minutes in the movie.
Okay, it wasn't that. It maybe every 20 minutes.
Oh man. Someone got up to get more food. And at the end of the movie, the lights came on, the end credits started rolling, and I looked over, and it was just these three girls and mountains, multiple things of popcorn, multiple little containers for the macaroni bites,
and it
multiple drinks. I mean, obviously more than three, right? More than one per person. It was just this mountain of food containers.
And it was not the crowd that I would expect to do that. They were girly girls. I was just wow.
And
okay.
Yeah, go off, queens. But they got up and they were whispering to the point of distraction.
Well, because when they would get up, I think they had to explain to their friends what the hell happened in the movie. So they would be the whole time.
Yeah, so munchies in several ways. Not only were the people in the movie munching, we had some, it was meta munching.
Do you want to give a plot summary and then get into it? Because I feel like your thoughts are far more interesting than my thoughts.
Okay. Yeah, so Nosferatu is a remake of a pretty old movie, which is based on Dracula, the novel. And it does really sort of follow a lot of Dracula, point by point. So we start with, a flashback to a young woman who calls out into the night, and Nosferatu answers. And then years later, she's now a newlywed, and her husband, he's a real estate agent in some part of Germany. Witzberg.
Which apparently is a coastal town. There's not a lot of them. But
yeah. Mm-hmm. So he is a real estate agent. His boss tells him there's a very old nobleman out in Transylvania that wants to buy a decrepit manor in Witzberg. And it's up to him to go out and sell this guy on this house, and he'll get a really nice commission.
Well, apparently he was already sold on it.
Yeah, but he had to go and do the paperwork, so the deal wasn't totally finished yet. So he travels, he leaves his wife behind, and his wife has apparently, her name's Ellen. His wife has been suffering from melancholy, but being in his presence has fixed her. Of course.
Classic. Yeah.
And so he travels, and he gets to Transylvania, and all the locals are like, please don't go there. Don't go to that castle. And he's like, I don't know what you're saying. And he goes to the castle.
Yeah, because, they're speaking Romanian, and he's like,
Yeah, he is clueless. And he goes to the castle, and he encounters Count, it's not Olaf, but Orlok. No,
sure.
I'm not saying it right. Whatever this guy's name is.
Isn't it Orlok or something like
Orlok.
that?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
There we go.
Yeah.
Encounter him, and he's like, something's wrong, but he doesn't leave. And he ends up signing this contract that's written in some foreign language. And then he discovers that Orlok sleeps in a coffin, and he tries to kill him, but Orlok gets the best of him, sucks on his blood from his chest, right over his heart.
Mounts him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gyrates, even.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then goes... So then he escapes out through window. All the while, back in Witzberg, Ellen has been staying with some friends and has been getting progressively worse. She's sleepwalking. She's, just very troubled at night. Also gyrating.
There's a lot of gyrating.
There's a lot of gyrating in this movie.
Yeah. And it is awkward almost all the time.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's fun gyrating.
It is. It is awkward.
Yeah. So anyway, he escapes. Some Orthodox priests and nuns are like, "We're gonna save you, but you have to stay here where the evil can't get to you." And he's like, "No, I must go save Ellen." So he comes back, and at the same time, Count Orlok has started traveling the seas in his coffin. And wherever he goes, there's a plague. So the sailors start to die off, and then they crash into Vicksburg, and the rats begin taking over the city. Yeah. He reaches Vicksburg at the same time as the husband, whose name is Thomas. And Ellen is torn because he's visiting her at night, but then her love for Thomas haunts her in the day. Their hosts, their friends, they start to die off, and so do their small children. And I guess I've left out Willem Dafoe, but Willem Dafoe is
in his crazy doctor era. You know what I mean? We had that. We had Poor Things.
I was like, when is he not in his crazy doctor era? I mean, he was in his crazy lighthouse era for a while.
That's true because in Spider-Man, he's
fair.
A bit of a scientist.
Yeah,
yeah,
a bit. So yes, Willem Dafoe throughout this whole thing is a doctor that's being consulted on Ellen and then the plague, and he's a disgraced professor because he got very into the occult and alchemy, and so he and Ellen realize that the only way to destroy this vampire and plague is to have her be a willing sacrifice, and so they distract her husband with a wild goose chase, and she beckons to Nosferatu, who comes to her at night. They hook up and all night, and he drinks all of her blood, and then in the morning he doesn't make it back to his coffin in time, and so they die together.
Yep.
Right as Thomas barges in and is like,
Ellen.
Yep,
and
there
that's
you
the
have
movie.
it.
What give me your initial thoughts, I guess.
Oh boy. Okay, so I guess
you guide the direction.
Yeah,
of the
so interestingly, I mean, this is not necessarily our genre, right? Like, we are not really horror people. I'm not typically a horror person because I don't do a lot of gore unless it's really campy. Oh, and this is what I was going to say. Willem Dafoe's in his crazy doctor era, but Nicholas Hoult is in his vampire era because he was just in Renfield.
Oh, he was?
Yeah. I feel like I learned something about him. Yeah. He's into vampires. I feel pretty confident about that one.
Well, based off this movie, he's really into vampires. You know
really
what I mean? Oh, my God.
To vampires.
Jesus Christ.
Why aren't you into horror?
I find horror to be actually a quite boring genre. Especially, like, now that I'm past the age of 13, I'm just kind of like, nothing's surprising, and it's not interesting. Nothing interesting happens in horror movies. And but if I may do a little bit of a side note, I didn't mind this one as much because interesting stuff happened. And the other thing that bothers me about a lot of horror movies is they're just like, there's a thing and we don't know what it is and it's never explained to you. And in this one, there's a lot of explanation, which is a plus and a minus for this film, honestly.
Yeah. So, well, I remember we first saw the trailer and I was like, oh, I definitely want to see this. And you were like, you? And the answer is yes, because I might not be crazy about horror, but I am very into Gothic.
Yeah.
So like fun fact about me, I really focused in on like Victorian literature, and Victorian literature does have
in college.
In college, I should say.
Yeah.
Does have some crossover like with Gothic, and there's so I ended up taking some classes on Gothic courses. I read Dracula in college for credit. And so for me, this movie was interesting because it's been several years since I've read Dracula, but like enough of it was still in my head that I'm like watching and very much like, oh yeah, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. This is why this is happening. Oh, look, because the interesting part about like Gothic and horror is the way in which they're a reflection of societal fears. That's how I was always taught to look at horror and Gothic.
Mm-hmm.
And so Dracula in particular was always very sensual, coming out of a time period where sexuality was, very taboo.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of fear of homoeroticism that's present in Dracula. And so right off the bat, when you see him biting into Thomas and like humping Thomas as he's drinking his blood, I'm like, yep, there we go. There it is. And so there were a lot of just like interesting, I mean, I don't know if interesting is the right word because it is based on Dracula, but just like it felt very familiar, even though I'd never seen the original Nosferatu, beyond some clips that I looked up earlier today, and so it's just like, yeah, this plot is very familiar. And so in that way, for me, this was a little boring just because I knew what was happening. And I was like, yeah, this character is clearly a knockoff of Van Helsing. And this character is, even the framing story of, oh, I'm a young man traveling on business and I somehow find myself in the vampire's home for a legitimate business deal.
Mm-hmm.
It's very familiar.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I've never read Dracula. I've never seen Nosferatu, and I was kind of like, this is, I don't know. It was interesting, and I kind of liked the deeper description of the paranormal aspects of it. The movie drags on quite a bit.
It is a very visually enticing movie.
I think, yeah, those were kind of some of the pluses I was gonna say. Like,
yeah.
I think that the costuming is really good. I think that the visuals are really good.
I, in particular, loved the visuals of the shadow of Nosferatu. Yeah. Like there's one where the shadow of his hand stretches across the city as the plague is infected, or his shadow will unlock a door. And I thought that was just like a very fun sort of like eye candy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I liked the costumes. I actually liked a lot of the choices in terms of what was going to be in black and white and what was more sepia toned.
What do you mean?
Like her dreams were often in black and white. Almost all, I think, were in black and white.
Well, it wasn't true black and white though. There was like blue in there, wasn't there?
Maybe, but it wasn't like now when you watch like those episodes of Game of Thrones where you're just in darkness.
Yeah.
I appreciated it it felt more black and white than what we get now.
Yeah.
And kind of harkens back to the original movie, but also makes it so that you can actually see what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the visual motifs that I actually really enjoyed was the smoke from the cigars and the pipes that just made it very hazy, and it was, I don't know, somehow the way that they captured that on film was very immersive to me.
Yeah, I think you like this movie more than I thought.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I thought that you like really didn't like this movie.
Well, I did get halfway through and I was like, oh my god, this is taking forever. And granted, that was my biggest
complaint about it too.
This is the same director as The Witch, and that movie also. You're just like, I'm aging as I'm watching. I don't think I've
seen The Witch.
Oh really?
No.
Oh okay. I watched that. Actually, we had like a whole movie night when I lived with Nicole and Izzy.
Oh yeah.
I think all three of us watched it, which was rare.
Interesting.
For all three of us to hang out.
Okay.
Yeah, but Nicole and I will call it the Vivitch. Dost thou want to live deliciously?
Oh, that's from that?
Yeah.
Oh.
Same director.
Interesting.
He also apparently did the Lighthouse movie with Willem Dafoe and...
I heard that was good.
Yeah, I never saw that one.
I never saw it.
But
didn't see it.
It seems to be in theme of this director.
Yeah.
Oh, well, what I was going to say was I got very tired of sitting there. And also I feel like our theater was not all that invested because everyone kept getting up.
Yeah, everyone did keep getting up.
Everyone kept getting up.
Did you see that one idiot who walked up to
Yes,
exit?
I did.
I was
yes,
like, when the hell have you ever been to a movie theater where you exit up, unless we're talking about like some sort of multi-story unit or something.
Oh, I was like, the movie theater that I grew up going to, you would sometimes exit up.
Right, but usually it's like a really big theater. Like most movie theaters in this country, you exit at the bottom.
I don't know. I thought it was funny just because he came in that way, and
yeah, I know.
He had to come in
what?
from the bottom. Anyway, it was just sort of like
a real lack of spatial awareness.
There was a lot of movement and distraction in our theater.
Yeah.
And so as we were watching, I was like, if I were watching this at home, would this keep my focus?
No.
And I don't think so. It felt like I was watching a series of tableaus.
Yeah.
As opposed to a very, like, slick story.
That's part of my problem with like horror movies is they don't keep my attention. There's not enough interesting stuff. Like I tell you, the best part of this movie, as far as I'm concerned, is Nicholas Holt's travels in to the castle and in the castle. That's the part that I found the most interesting. And then outside of that, I was just like, I get it. We need to kill this guy. And they're like 3 nights. And I'm like, fuck.
No, because I had the same reaction to the 3 nights. I was like, not 3.
I was like,
not 3 of them. That's interesting, though, because for the castle, I was like, yes, I know what this is. I get why it's suspenseful. Let's keep it moving. And I was actually very frustrated by the castle. And, like, I can appreciate that the whole point of the long, drawn-out movie is to up the suspense and all of that. I understand why it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
It just, for me, I'm like, it almost pulls me out of it because I'm like, yes, we're going intentionally slow to make this painful and suspenseful. Now that we've established that it's painful and suspenseful, let's move it along.
I think that this is also a problem that I have with the horror genre in general, is it's like it's all about suspense and there is no resolution. Or when there is resolution, it is so dull and boring that I'm just like, okay. Like the end of this movie, I was just like, okay. Like I saw it coming from a mile away. It happens and it's not like grandiose or anything like that. You know what I mean? And I don't need everything to be grandiose, but I'm just kind of like...
The most shocking part of this movie for me was when they walked in to the mausoleum after the friends that they've been staying with have died.
Yeah.
And the Aaron Taylor Johnson's character has opened his wife's casket.
Yeah.
And, like, I knew he was, like, going to kiss her, but it fully looked like he died while, like...
No.
Sleeping with her corpse.
No, he was.
Like,
that's totally what happened.
Her corpse. Yeah. That, to me, was shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That shocked... So, I don't know. I guess, like, I understand this whole thing is like, oh, death and sex are related, and, like...
Are they?
Well, in this, I mean, the vampire's, like, her whole desire, right? Like, her urges...
Yeah.
She conjures him in some way, like he's been asleep for so long and she's the thing that revives him. And I feel like...
And he's death. Is that the idea?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Because they're all like, oh, death and the maiden in that text that they're looking at. But I feel like Aaron Taylor Johnson's character doesn't like her. Mm-hmm. And I think it comes out to be more of like a... You go against social norms in ways that I also sort of want, because he's very into his wife too.
Yeah.
And then he ends up dying while
breaking social norms?
No, that's not what I mean. I mean, like, yes, he is breaking social norms.
What do you mean?
No, but his death is sexual.
So? Yeah.
So is her, like that. I'm saying there's like a parallel between these characters.
Oh, okay, I see.
And it's
what
like
you're saying.
He's looking at her and seeing something reflected back, and that's why that whole scene where she's like, "You don't like me," and it's because their sexuality is heightened.
Yeah.
Between like his towards his wife, he's always initiating things, and
like clearly there's like some themes happening here that I just don't get as a 21st century viewer that you might understand as a...
Oh, sure.
What's happening?
Okay.
With that?
Like the sexuality stuff?
Yeah, because I'm not getting the connection that you're like, yeah, death and sex are related. And I'm like, are they?
Okay, so back in this time,
Mm-hmm.
right? This girl, Ellen, is essentially a fallen woman because she admits, she's like, oh, I became this character's lover.
Gotcha.
And in this period, like, you've got morality and like very strict lines about morality.
Oh, is that why
And
they
so-
bring that like virgin girl on a horse to the vampire?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
And
gotcha.
so she's no longer pure.
Mm-hmm.
She's tainted. She's, all of this stuff. The only way for her to redeem herself is to die. So you have this trope in a lot of this type of literature that fallen women are redeemed through death. And so they're
because God's the only thing that can save them, sort of a thing.
You're bringing like maybe, but
Okay.
not necessarily. It's
Okay.
like it's almost a moral warning, but also sort of just this trope. So the idea is like you have sex, like specifically unmarried,
Right.
like premarital sex,
Yeah.
and you die.
Right.
Right? Like it'll bring about your ruin,
Yeah.
and then you end up dead.
Mm-hmm.
And in the same way, it's almost that whole thing of like, thou shall not suffer a witch to live. It's like, thou shall not suffer a fornicator, if they're a woman, to live, in literature. So like, you just have a lot of examples of like Tess of the D'Urbervilles, I think The Girl in Mill on the Floss,
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of, or is it Middlemarch? Don't quote me, it's been a while. But you have a lot of these characters that you either need to be married,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can do that, or you will die. And so
Okay,
it's this
I
it's
see.
this intertwining of sexuality and death.
Yeah,
And
there's-
then like purification through death.
I was gonna say there's this interesting thing where it's like I feel like it pops up in some literature things where it's like the only thing that can kill evil is evil. Like good overcomes evil because of evil's faults, sort of a thing. Because I'm like Nicholas Holt's character technically never did anything bad. And-
right. He didn't do anything bad.
Right, but like he's the only one who makes it out. Who's like a main protagonist, I guess, who has like actual stuff to do, I guess, besides the doctor, the weird doctor, scientist person. And like the only way that Death, who's clearly Nosferatu is evil, and the only way that he could be defeated was through his like lust, I guess. You see what I mean? That's the only thing that would be able to defeat him, and like the only thing, and like he gives in too much into sin, sort of a thing.
Well, yeah, like lust is definitely his undoing, and
Right.
it's also her undoing because she conjured him out of her lust.
Right.
And I mean, good question is, does this movie play into that mentality, or is it just that it's keeping with the plot points of an earlier story?
Yeah.
Because, I
Yeah.
mean, like, I don't feel like this movie really condemns Ellen.
Well, yeah, because there's the whole speech that Willem Dafoe where he's like, you'd be a priestess or whatever. And I'm like, I felt like that was like the, I guess for lack of a better term, like the feminist hurrah thing. But I don't know if it is.
Yeah, I didn't read it like that.
Okay.
I read it more as like this guy was deeply into mysticism and it's heightening that sense of mysticism. But I feel like a lot of the scenes, like her desire is not, it's reprehensible from the perspective of the male character who ends up killing himself near his wife, or like dying near his wife's body.
Yeah.
I don't know his name. Taylor Johnson's character.
Yeah.
I feel like he's the only one that's like really kind of repulsed by her. But other than that, and he's not a particularly sympathetic character either. Like he just seems sort of like a.
Dude, his acting was weird in this movie.
It was
so
weird.
straight. Like
Some lines he would deliver normally, and then some it was like.
There was that that scene where he's
So
talking not
posed.
to the paranormal doctor, but like the doctor, and he's like, doctor's like, I don't know what it is, and he's like, what?
I know. Like
Excuse me?
every
Huh?
every
And I'm
line
like, oh my
in that
God.
scene was just like soap opera.
I know. I'm like,
But
dude,
but he
what
was
is
the
going
only one on that level.
Yes.
And I mean, I guess I really haven't seen him act in much that I can think of off the top of my head.
No, I can't either.
But I was just like, What? The tone shift.
it was
It was comical.
No, it was funny.
It was really
It was
funny.
really fun. I was like, and he was doing it off screen too. I was like, is that really the best take we had of this, like sound wise? Like was the boom mic operator sleeping, and they were like, oh shit, we only
they
have one good
re-record
one.
most of their lines anyway.
I know. I'm like, what is this crap? Like,
Yeah, no. So anyway, his character's not very sympathetic, and the portrayal was just kind of bananas.
yeah.
But I feel like a lot of the scenes, like her dreams, I feel like they're from her perspective for the most part. Like we're not disembodied from her.
100% from
Yeah,
her
but you know what I mean? Like
perspective.
we're not disembodied from her. We're not looking at her through a lens of kind of surveillance. Does that make sense? In the way that I felt like Poor Things, like I was looking in and like I became a voyeur watching Emma Stone's character. I didn't feel that way in this movie. I felt like I was very close to the lens of the character.
I feel like that's because the camera work was actually really good in this movie. Like,
The camera work.
It's like there was a lot of slow pans and interesting shots to where it's like, oh, you know what's going to happen, and you can feel what the characters are feeling in that moment.
In the most professional way I've ever seen, the like cutting off of people's heads in the shot looked so arty and professional.
Yeah.
In what should be like very amateur, but they really did a great job of like panning but not capturing someone's whole body.
Yeah, and I guess that's like part of the cinematographer's, like that's cinematography, I guess, but like
that's cinema, baby.
That's cinema. But like I feel like the actual people operating the cameras and the director like really had a clear vision of what they wanted to have happen here.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I get it. Like this is good. Like it's good handiwork.
Yeah. No,
You know?
I mean, like, a lot of technical aspects I was just really pleased with. And I think the script was pretty good. It was just that, for me, it felt like a knockoff because I'd done a lot of work around the Dracula text.
I'm going to skip this. I'm going to skip a little bit. And I want to... What do you rank this movie out of 10?
Ooh, and that is a good question. So I should say...
Because I'm so curious, because I'm just like... I don't know. This was not what the Maddie I was expecting tonight. So
our car ride home was silent because I really wanted to talk about this.
Yeah, we were complaining about the cold. That was it.
I really wanted to talk about the movie. And
I know. Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking about what I would rank it.
Mm-hmm.
I think not, and this isn't necessarily like me saying that any part of it was bad. I just didn't enjoy a lot of it. Like, I don't know. And that's such a harsh thing to say, but it wasn't my movie.
But you know what? I know that if people listen to this and they like horror, we're going to get a lot of hate for this shit because they're going to be like, it's so good. Blah, 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 blah.
And to that I'll say,
sorry,
it is technically very good.
Yeah.
Not my cup of tea.
Right.
So I'm going to give it like a 4 or 5.
Okay. That's more what I was thinking that you were going to say. Yeah. For me, I would say like... This is a toughie because I'm like, having watched the whole thing and paid attention and like the technical aspects of the movie and everything, I really enjoyed it. I would probably say for that alone, I would rank, like, I'm thinking like a 6 because, see, this is my thing is I'm like, do I like it more than Gladiator, which we just watched? And I'm like, I do like it more than Gladiator. But I like it more for, completely different reasons, like...
No, that's very fair.
And like I think that from a technical standpoint, this is a better film.
I think that this is a good movie.
Right.
But
exactly.
But it's kind of like wine. You can have a good wine and you still don't like it.
Yeah, like I don't want to see this movie again, but like I'll admit that it was good.
Yeah.
You know?
Very well done.
Yeah.
With the exception of Aaron Taylor Johnson's character, I felt like everyone very well acted. Costumes, cinematography, immaculate.
Costumes were really good.
It was very this movie felt very like visually deep. There was a lot of like ambiance that wasn't just in interior scenes.
Yeah.
The exterior played into a lot of the gothic kind of, I don't know, vibe and motif.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it just I guess my thing is like I want to see gothic reinvented in a way. I feel like, and one of the thoughts I had while watching this was I was like, yep, and there's the vampire in the ship, because there's always that scene, and here's the young woman in the nightgown, because there's always that scene. You know, I was just like, yeah, we're checking off these boxes of like typical vampire and gothic, you know, on-screen portrayals. Like I know there was another vampire movie recently that was all about a vampire being transported on a ship, and we didn't see it, but I remember the.
Oh,
do you remember? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, that movie.
Yeah. I remember seeing the trailers for it.
Yeah, and I actually was interested in seeing that movie too, because again, I like gothic stuff. But that's where this movie lost me. Was I was just like, yes, we are checking off boxes, and the boxes are checked particularly well. Like, that check mark is the nicest check mark I've seen in a very long time, but it still felt like checking off boxes.
Hear me out. I feel like this movie, and maybe I'm completely wrong, you tell me, is like Shakespeare, but like people are like, we're going to perform it authentically. And I'm like, oh, that sucks, dude. There's nothing interesting about that.
It's funny that you say that, because I did have the thought halfway through of like, how different would this be if you translated it to modern day? Like, or just a different time period. Right. And how would you translate this? Because I think that'd be really interesting. But also, I was like, oh, we're giving lines like we're in Shakespeare. And one thing that I thought was really kind of cool, that was fun for me as a performance geek, is the creepy former boss of Nicholas Holt's character, who is like the servant of Nosferatu. Dude. In some of his lines, he was spitting the way that you get when you go to see Shakespeare performed by professionals. And I was like...
I remember the first time when we went to go see Shakespeare by profesh people, I was like, dude, this guy is like living in mist. Like, this is atrocious. Like, with how much spit he's got going on. I was like, God... Like, that woman's face must be, like, felt like it got rained on.
And that is like, why you don't sit in the first row.
Yeah.
That's just a fact.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, oh, this is kind of fun in all of these ways, because it does feel Shakespearean in that, like, you're watching kind of an epic in some way, and the performances that people are giving are very classic, with the exception.
Yeah, with the exception, yeah. Or maybe it was classic, and the classic overacting kind of...
Yeah, classic for a daytime soap.
Yeah, exactly. No, okay.
What?
I have two things about this movie. One thing that I liked and one thing that I didn't like. Okay. So I thought that the makeup was really, really good. Bill Skarsgård, I was like, bruh, this guy looks nasty. I know that some of it was CGI, but like at the end, I was like, nah, man, that's like a prop. Like that is silicone just hanging out, like, you know, and it looked gross.
He reminded me of the evil guy from Lazy Town mixed with bowler hat guy from Meet the Robinsons. Like, the way that his face and body looked.
Is that who it is?
Is that what it's called?
Lazy Town? No, I think you're thinking of the blue guy from Lazy Town.
Yeah, I never watched Lazy Town. I just saw those clips.
You're thinking of this guy, right?
Yeah, is he not the evil?
He's the superhero dude. He's
no, I'm thinking of.
You're thinking of that guy?
Of that guy, yeah.
Oh, you're thinking of the other guy,
dude. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Although I could see where the mustache of the blue guy.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, frankly, I'm just impressed. I remembered the name of this thing.
He did have the physique of the. Of the bowler hat guy. It was...
Yeah, and that was an insane mustache. When they kissed at the end, I was like, barf, this has got to be so gross.
Everything in that movie, I was like,
that smell, and then the mustache.
I thought that was really good. So props to the makeup people on top of the costume people.
Yeah.
But then I really didn't like the soundtrack in this film. It was just boring. And I feel like this movie would have felt more interesting and suspenseful and quicker paced if the soundtrack was better. I felt like there were a lot of long moments of silence, which in a horror film can sometimes be good. Like when she's like coming back down the hallway after seeing her kids and there's the slow camera pane and all you hear is the footsteps. I was like, that's the best sound design, because I'm like, oh, is he here? What's happening? Where's Frederick? You know?
Yeah.
Friedrich. And it's like, okay.
Oh, yeah, that's his name.
That's his name. Yeah. Friedrich. And I'm like, this is interesting. And then it pans to the woman. And I'm like, okay. But like when they're like on the hunt and they're like, where's Friedrich? Oh my God. And they're like running to the castle and everything. There's like some violin, but it's like not there.
It's always a violin. Piggybacking off of that, I felt like this movie and Conclave had something in common, which is that they were relying primarily on breath work to up the suspense.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of over it. I don't want to hear you breathing that heavily all the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think what would have been better for me personally is a different soundtrack and less heavy breathing.
Yeah. I feel like I've no movies that are this long where it doesn't feel like they're this. I mean, how long was this movie? This is only 2 hours and 12 minutes.
It felt much
I'm not
longer.
gonna lie, I thought this was 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Yeah.
That's wild.
No, I did too.
That's wild. I was like, oh my God, let's go.
I believe I leaned over to you halfway through and said, we've been here for 1,000
It's in
years.
years. I know you said that, and I was like, yeah, I know. Tell me about it.
Again, when we got to you have 3 nights, I was like, you're kidding. We have to sit through 3 of these bad boys. And I mean, again, I appreciate what the intent is, but at the same time, it didn't need to feel like 1,000 years in that scene.
No. What I would do is I would cut out the third night. Like, not... Or the second night, I guess. Like, I would take everything that happens on that second night, and I would put it in the first night or the third night. You know what I mean? Like, it is just, like, boring. I do not care. Like...
You said rip to those kids, but...
Yeah, or, like, make the second night, like, I don't know, like 2 minutes long. You know what I mean?
Did you see at the... I didn't even hear them... hear when this played, but at the end credits, they listed that they'd played O Tannenbaum, and did you catch where that was? Because I don't even remember that.
It must have been in the background when they had the Christmas tree.
Well, yeah.
That's all that I can think of.
Right, I didn't even catch that.
No, I mean, but that's what I'm saying. The music was
not
so
memorable.
quiet. The music was so quiet, and I was like, oh my God, please just give me some music. It's so important, and I feel like that's the one thing that the director just did not care about. He was like, we don't need music. We're good. And I'm like, oh, bro, you're killing me. Like, I know the Gothic people listen to music. So.
Famously. This is a deviation from this conversation, but what did you think of Lily Rose Depp?
Dude, okay. I felt like she did, when she was just her normal self, I was like, I don't know, she's kind of boring, but I think that's the point, is she's supposed to be like a boring girl when she's with Tom, and she's just like, oh, I'm just normal. But then when she plays crazy really well.
Yeah.
And like the scene when on the second night, where she is like, you don't love me, Tom. And like she starts like convulsing as she's like walking towards him, and like has spit running down her face, and then like her tongue sticking out and everything, and I'm like, what the hell is going on?
She was gonna bite her tongue off.
I know. I
looked away because I was like, I don't want to see this.
I was like, nah, bro, no.
But also interesting about that scene in particular was where she called Thomas like a weak, like a lily-livered woman.
Yeah.
Which again, I was like, we've got some, like, you know, fear of homoeroticism again popping up in that, because she like said that he went to Count Orlok.
And gave
willingly,
in to him.
Yeah, and like submitted essentially. It was very, that to me, that section was like very charged.
Yeah, I see. No, definitely, and it was like a really weird. Well, for a second, when she's like bending, like after she has her crazy episode, and then she's down, like she's on her knees in front of him, I was oh my God, she's gonna bite this man's dick off.
I had that thought
like,
too.
Like not only her tongue, I was like this. I'm like, I am not ready for this. Like this is, oh man. But then she didn't, and instead they just had it. You know, just went to town on the couch.
Very
and
abruptly,
she was like,
and
I was like, whoa, okay.
That didn't look pleasant for anyone involved. But again, this is like...
But it's like the show him that we really love each other.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh,
they
God.
didn't show me that. But I think it's that whole thing of like, as opposed to other vampires, this one is repulsive. And it's this kind of like, this underbelly of sexuality, underbelly of desire. That, like, Dracula is very suave and, you know, just desirable.
Okay.
And that's kind of like that whole, like, even in Twilight, Edward's like, Edward is desired
Twilight
by
and
everyone.
True Blood and stuff like that.
Yeah, they're like, this is this whole kind of like newer literary tradition of vampires being really desirable. And so beautiful and whatnot. And this one was like fucking disgusting.
Yeah, when they were like, he's a demon, I was like, yeah, bro,
yeah,
I'm in.
that's a rotting corpse. Like, there are maggots coming out of his back.
Yeah. I was like, ooh.
And yeah, so as opposed to this sort of like sexy vampire, there's a lot of like eroticism, but it's gross.
Do you think that's how like the original authors would have intended it to be? Like, this is a gross human who is like sexually manipulating these tainted people or something?
Certainly sexually manipulative, but like no, I feel like I'm remembering, Dracula is not disgusting. Like, there's an element
like
of
a charming person,
desirability, and like not a rotting corpse. Yeah, so just different in that way.
Yeah.
So, again, like a theme of like, I don't know, I guess the way that I put it, I think really hits it home, and I like it, the underbelly of desire, and like how not all things are nice and pretty when there's an element of desire. Like,
well, she kind of Ellen, the character, mentions that, where she's like, oh, at first it was really sweet, and then he like slowly turned on me and manipulated me, and I was like, oh, this is truly an abusive relationship.
Yeah,
like,
no, those words triggered the same thought in my head too. And I think like that's where kind of the historical context comes in too. It's like for a woman of this time period, especially like not so much a married woman, but like an unmarried woman, any desire is insidious culturally. And it makes you repulsive. Having desires in this culture as a young unmarried woman makes you repulsive. And even to an extent, like having desire, like too much, like wanting it too much as a married woman, same thing. That's unnatural. That's gross. That is like, what's wrong with you? You must be tainted in some way.
But that's interesting though, because the first scene of Nicholas Hoult and Lily Rose Depp's character when they're married is where she's like, oh, don't
Stay
go.
in bed.
And he's like, oh,
I gotta go.
He's like, I have work to do. Like, I'm lucky to have married you, but I have to think about us. And it's like, oh, okay. This is...
Well, and then they say like, oh, you're 15 minutes late and you're a newlywed. And that's like not good, but we understand. But we as the audience know that that's not why he's late. Like, they were just sleeping. Like, nothing happened.
Yeah, well, he got stopped by that horse or whatever.
Fair.
I think that's why he's late.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah.
But like, even so,
right.
That's not at all what was going on. And the only scene that we see them together is that really kind of like off-putting. Yeah. Where it's like, we'll show him our love, and it's like that looked.
He like reclaims her
that
or whatever.
Looked horrible for everyone. Like, that looked like traumatizing for everyone involved.
Yeah.
So just an interesting thought there too, that like even in her own relationship, she's still, her desires are kind of outmatching her partner's. Which is taboo for that sort of.
So do you think that situation, like the whole idea and like the reason that the story is written is it's like a warning tale, you know, kind of like the Grimm fairy tales, sort of, where they're like more warnings than like actually teaching you some sort of like a high moral standard necessarily?
No, I don't think so, because, well, again, are you talking about Dracula or Nosferatu? Because Nosferatu wasn't a book in the same way, it was always a movie.
I mean, I guess both. I mean, like, vampires in general and stuff like that.
Yeah, okay. I mean, the literary tradition of vampires, I don't think is necessarily a warning. It's always been like more homoerotic and like dealing with like social anxieties around that. There's a very famous novella called Carmilla about a lesbian vampire. And again, I mean, I guess maybe a warning, but if you're reading that kind of book in that time period too, like
You're already
that's
doing something
avant-garde
taboo.
a little bit. Yeah, you know.
Okay. It's like it's like something that you shouldn't be doing, but you are.
It wouldn't be like polite. It would be
Right.
like
You wouldn't talk about it around your grandmother.
it would be like all of those people who go out and like read smut out in the real world.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, oh. Okay.
Right.
But maybe a little bit worse. You know. So I don't know.
Like I say, it's something you wouldn't talk about around grandma.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think like probably you could make an argument that yeah, it's a warning, it's a societal warning in the way that a lot of fairy tales are, like you mentioned.
Sure. Yeah.
But at the same point, I think it does kind of fall in a little bit more out of the realm of that and into that horror thing where it's more of like a society, like a reckoning of society's fears and a reckoning of the issues that are tense within a culture.
Yeah.
And it just so happens that for our culture, sexuality has been a very tense subject for a long time.
Right.
You know, because I think there's a way of looking at it now, like looking at this movie and being like, oh, and asking like, what are we dealing with here? Like if we're thinking about it being remade now, what's the issue here that's being addressed? Like what's the societal discomfort or societal anxiety that we're addressing? And I think there's a couple different ways that you could take it. You know, it just depends on your interpretation. Like,
yeah,
the policing of women's desires in some ways is still very much a recurring theme that we're dealing with right now, or policing of sexuality. There's also like leaving the home in some ways, like,
oh, you know what, yeah, that's true, because there is that thing where Friedrich is like, you cannot go unaccompanied, even though she wants to do the thing that will probably help her husband or like solve some of the mystery, because she wants to talk to his boss and everything. And he's like, I cannot allow that. It's improper. Like, a woman can't talk to her husband's boss at all. You know, like, that would be impolite. Like, there's a social structure in place here.
Yeah. Well, and I also mean, like, for Nicholas Holt's character, like, leaving the home. And when you're thinking about the United States becoming more of an inward political society, like we're becoming more insular. That idea that you travel far and something bad happens to your home while you're away, that's facilitated by the external force.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just a lot of things that you could say there. A young woman who has to sacrifice herself sexually or, you know, like physically to an older, truly disgusting, powerful man. I mean, there's a lot of things there that I think if we were to pull apart, you could go a lot of different ways.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
But that was something that I kept, like, every turn I was like, oh, what are we dealing with here?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the question of, like, did this illuminate any societal pressures that we're feeling now? Or again, is it because we've set it where it is and maybe haven't, you know, did we change things to represent today's moment? That's really the question that I'm getting at.
Right. Yeah.
Talks a lot, says the least. That's me.
Yeah. I think that's partially the issue. Didn't feel modern enough to me in a way. Like, I think that you're right. Like, there are themes here that are present, but I'm like, I wish it was just told slightly differently. You know what I mean? Like you're saying, I wish that they would have done something different with the Gothic style and stuff, and it wasn't so Gothic heavy, or just did something slightly different. I don't know. There's something missing from this movie that is frustrating me, because I just, like, I hear what you're saying and I agree with what you're saying. I'm just like, ugh, like, I'm just missing that nugget. And it's really, it's driving me a little bonkers. And I don't really necessarily have a good example to go against it or whatever. where I'm like, oh yeah, this really is hitting home on
I mean,
certain
admit it,
things.
and we said from the beginning, if you're a horror person and you love this, that's
Yeah.
great. We aren't your typical horror people.
No.
So we're like, peace and love, all respect to you guys. We just might not see it the way that you see it.
I will sleep perfectly fine tonight.
And I will too.
Yeah. But that's the thing. That's where I'm like, I feel like horror movies are supposed to like scare you. And the problem is I get done with them and I'm like, But this one did better than most.
I think
in my
too,
opinion.
though, a vampire horror movie, you're going to have a really hard time with someone from our time period really freaking us out. Like, truly the gore was what was so nasty and making him repulsive.
Oh,
but
there
we're
were definitely disgusting
we're
parts
so
in this movie.
normalized to vampires. The other thing that this made me think of was all of those books about like monster, like, I think, isn't it called monster porn?
You know more about this than me.
Okay, well, don't say it like that because I don't know much about it. I just,
I'm just saying.
but like,
like the tentacle porn stuff. Is that what you're talking about?
no, there's like a subgenre of smut where it's like women falling in love with monsters. It's like a whole kind of Beauty and the Beast thing, but like taken to an extreme, I guess.
Yeah.
I have not read any, but it makes me think of some books that like I know exist that I've not read.
Yeah.
This makes me sound like I'm judging them. I'm not. It's just not for me.
Yeah.
But the whole sort of like repulsive potential love interest is
Yeah.
like, I don't know. I feel like maybe there is a market for that.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, no, there's definitely, there's something there with that. Yeah. I mean, like, this is this is all I'm saying. I always got to take a weird right turn with this podcast or whatever. Like, this movie did not scare me. I'm more afraid that, like, I'm going to wake up and, like, the Russians are, like, nuking the United States. You know what I mean? Like, this, I'm just like,
And to that, I say, did this movie address that at all? Having a Russian-sounding evil character come in?
That's very communist thinking of you, thinking that this Romanian person was Russian.
I didn't say he was Russian. I'm saying that, like,
You said he sounded Russian. That's like, you're achieving the Soviet dream right now by saying that he sounds Russian.
Yeah, call me comrade.
Yeah, Stalin's sitting there like, yes, this is exactly what I wanted from the grave. Like, he's ready. He's ready to conquer. He's ready. he's ready to go back into Budapest in 54 or whenever it was, and be like, bring in the tanks and be like, oh no, we control this.
Yeah,
he's ready to rock and roll.
My Hungarian forefathers are
quaking in their boots,
shaking their fists at me.
I know. They're
but like truly to that point, I mean, to an American audience, it's Eastern European, and that anxiety of like Cold War, Soviet era, like fear. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that there is... I feel so bad for the Eastern Europeans because they have such a stereotype around them, and, like, I know that if I were to go to, like, most places in the post-Soviet bloc, I'd be like, oh, this is fine. Like,
Oh, for sure.
I mean, I've been to the Czech Republic. It's pretty modern. They've just got some old shit laying around. You know what I mean? Like...
Yeah, no, and I'm not saying that, like, that...
No, but it's that
But I'm saying, like,
inexperienced American, like, who hasn't traveled. Yeah.
Well, not even necessarily that. Just more of like the American zeitgeist, where I think even though yes, the Soviet Union's been broken up for a long time, we look at it as one big block still.
Right, but I also feel like there's a Western European thing too, where it's like the East is still viewed as this backwards people.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, they're lucky that they're in the European Union because the Germans have civilized them. Like they're achieving the dream of Frederick the Great, who like helped save the Poles. There's that very famous painting of him like helping a Polish farmer like plant seeds because he's like freeing them from oppression and like enlightening them. It's like, okay, whatever, dude.
Yeah.
Like
no, I guess my point is just, once again, there's a couple different angles that you could take, and one could be like East versus West, and the threat of that currently that we might feel. Yeah.
That's true. That's a good point. I didn't really think about it that way until right now. but that's true. So,
But I was also combing through being like, what could the possible anxieties that we're looking at be? And so I, grasping at some straws there. But yeah, I don't know.
I loved, side note, I know we're going on a little bit longer than usual, but I loved the British Germans in this movie.
I was like, why couldn't we just have them
Do German accents?
talk like, little Germans?
Oh, little Germans.
Yeah.
We're going to Transylvania and we're going to see the guy.
My name is Friedrich.
I think the problem is the problem is if they spoke German, all the themes about being like anti-homosexual and everything just would not ring true because they're European already. Like they're German, you know what I mean? Like everyone would have been like, expected, So.
Oh, man.
But yeah, no, I don't know.
What language was Nosferatu speaking?
It sounded like Old English.
Really?
It was sometimes it sounded
Was it
sounded
not
Germanic.
Latin?
It didn't sound Latin to me. It's been a while since I've taken Latin, but the problem is Latin. You will be able to notice similarities between like Latin and Spanish and Italian.
Well, that's just it. I was catching some words that I thought like when he was saying you, he was saying like to or something. Which...
I thought he was saying du, like the German.
But why would he be speaking a...
I don't know. Maybe he was speaking Romanian.
I was like, isn't Romanian a Romance language?
It's a romantic language.
Yeah, because it's like Romanian.
Yeah, no, it's a Romance language.
Yeah.
It could have been Romanian. I don't know. We could.
You have someone who could tell you.
Yeah, I was gonna say we could find out and let you know later on. I'll post a little comment on the video. I'll have him watch the trailer and I'll have Christian watch the trailer.
Yeah.
And let me know.
Matt has a very Romanian friend. Like.
Well, he's first gen.
Yeah,
so.
first gen.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying. Like you'll get it from the source.
Yeah.
I just wasn't sure.
I did. You know what? This is going to sound very strange, but I appreciate the lack of Catholic representation and how they went for the Orthodox here.
Oh yeah, I was like
dope.
That's fun.
Yeah, that's
very fun.
Because I was getting ready when they were like, "Oh, the scientist." I was like, "Dude, this guy's going to be like some crazy Catholic priest or something."
That was another thing where it's like the idea that you had to reject modern science and harken back to a mysticism that had been abandoned.
Yeah. Which is very interesting because the Orthodox Church is very mystic.
It is,
yes.
Yeah.
So.
I was like, yeah, Catholics have demons. Orthodox can have vampires.
Demons,
yeah, but like, come on, like the exorcism, like that's very Catholic coded. I mean,
oh yeah, no,
we've got all of that. Like, yeah, let them take the spotlight for once.
Fair enough. I mean, I hear you.
You greedy Catholics.
I know.
Wanting all the screen time.
We're trying to reunify. We're trying to come into communion with them, So.
You need like a buddy cop comedy with a Catholic priest and an Orthodox priest.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Yeah. So that'd be funny.
That. For you and me, maybe for no one else, but for you and me, we would enjoy that.
Yeah, no, I'd be like, that's hilarious. Yeah. It'd be a very niche audience.
Yeah. Although Conclave got made.
I don't know though. Yeah. I mean, fair enough. I feel like Conclave maybe had a little bit more to say than the buddy cop.
Did you see that Barack Obama mentioned Conclave in his top movies of 2024?
Really?
Yeah.
Wait, what was Barack Obama? Guys, we're going to go on a little bit of a tangent. You know what? You're just going to listen. If you want to stop it right now, you go for it. But
We know you won't.
Yeah, that's true.
At Ryan.
I'm looking it up. The favorite movies of 2022. Oh man,
2024.
Sorry, I can't read. He enjoyed this year his All We Imagine Is Light. I don't know that. The Conclave, The Piano Lesson, The Promised Land, The Seed of a Sacred Flag, Dune Part 2. What a G.
It can't be an episode of And Rolling if we don't mention Dune Part 2.
Damn right. Yeah. Speaking of which, yeah, your dad was like, "Yo, I'm gonna watch Dune," and I was like, "Hell yeah."
Really?
Were you not there?
I don't think so.
Oh, well, because I was talking to your mom about Halo.
Oh,
and then
no,
he
I
was
stepped
like,
away.
I haven't seen it. And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Nevin, let's go. Honora Diddy?
Honora I almost thought about watching that one tonight.
Sugarcane and then a complete unknown. Oh, was it still in theaters?
Yeah, but only at like 10:40, so that's why we didn't go.
10:40. No.
Yeah, down to one showing a day, so
Oh,
we might have to catch that one outside of the theater.
Yeah, I think we'll do some outside of the theater stuff.
Yeah.
I know we talked about Klaus. We could do a post-holiday Klaus run.
Oh, yeah, we could.
Yeah.
We could.
Christmas in July, maybe.
Oh, that'd be fun.
That would be fun. So, anyways, that's Nosferatu, I guess. You know, I feel like we've hit on a lot of stuff. This is a pretty deep conversation about Gothic life.
Gothic.
Yep. That was German. Good.
That was actually a reference to My Immortal. I'm Gothic, ain't I? In it, I'm Gothic.
Yeah. So, maybe see it, maybe not.
If you're a big horror fan, go off.
Yeah.
Go
honestly,
off, Queen.
If you really like horror, you'll like this movie.
We love that for you.
If you don't,
if you like vampires,
maybe
go off. It won't be like the vampires we've gotten used to seeing, but
it won't be like
you
True
still
Blood.
you still might like it. Why is True Blood your vampire thing of
I had
choice?
to watch it.
We
for a
are of the
class.
Twilight generation.
Yeah, but I never watched. I've never seen Twilight, and then
You've never seen Twilight?
you know this about me.
I've repressed this about you. I'm
Well,
not even like a big
apparently the same
Twilight
way
girly, but like
you repressed the thought about how you apparently Sweet Tart Ropes is not your favorite candy. You told me that, and then you're like, no, what is this crap? I'm just saying.
you have such a gift of just stopping the conversation.
I'm just saying. So, you know.
Back to the important thing of Twilight. Maybe that's what we need to do.
Watch Twilight.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was like, I wish we were doing this podcast when we were watching all the Harry Potter movies. Because,
oh yeah,
like,
we did just do that.
Yeah, because that would have been fun. Because like now as an adult, I have a fonder appreciation for them in some ways.
Yeah, we can relive that if you want.
I know. I gotta wait a little bit.
But yeah,
Yeah.
Twilight. The girls, Haley and Allie, just watched Twilight. My sisters, the girls.
Really?
Yeah, they've been in the rewatch. Al's like real big into it right now. Yeah. Well, okay. So anyway, if you are into vampires, maybe check it out. If you're, someone like us and horror's not really your thing, you're not missing much. You can.
If you're really into the bowler cap guy from Meet the Robinsons,
This is definitely the movie for you.
this is it. And I mean like into in a sexual way.
Oh no, we got it.
Yeah.
We understood loud and clear. Dare I say?
Okay.
On that note, good night, everybody.
Night. Do a little clap again. Awesome.